channel, we all love our royal history, and like me, I think you find it fascinating because we think we know everything about the monarchy, but of course they've got a very big private side that really very few get to see into. And when you're lucky enough like me to interview and meet many people who've worked with them, met them professionally, particularly people who've worked, say for instance, behind the scenes on the Royal Variety, and they got to find out exactly what the royals like to watch, to listen to, who made them laugh, that sort of stuff. I remember the brilliant late comedian Sir Norman Wisdom telling me that he was absolutely astounded when the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh said that they often screened his films at Windsor just for their own simple enjoyment because they loved them. You know, hit movies like Trouble in Store, that sort of stuff. And he said, you kind of think, really? You watch my films? And, Norman was such a lovely man, and you kind of think, yes, of course they are human, just because they're a product of royalty. It's always interesting, isn't it? And recently, as you know, I was lucky enough to share that wonderful story about the late and beautiful Princess Diana and the Queen Mother, and her trying her best, despite the generation gap, to try and get something through to her to say, look, life's tough, but if you go down this route, it might help you. People mocked the Queen Mother and said she was out of touch, but I thought she did her best under very difficult circumstances, you know what I mean? Now, it's interesting to find out because one of the most derided, some people might say, hateful in others, some people just can't abide the woman, is this lady, Wallis Simpson. Now, infamous or famous, whichever way you want to look at it, and recently we took you to the former flat that she lived in just off Marble Arch, George Street. And as I said, it's a strange building to go to because you think every bit of history walked through that door and very little has changed in the inside of the building. So it gives you a magnificent feeling as to what really went on. But it's fascinating to find out that actually a modern day royal wasn't exactly totally against Wallis Simpson. Let me explain. To see you today, you all right? Yes, we'll have a lovely wave. Yeah, thank you. It's always good to see all my chums, and thank you as ever for supporting, for sharing, for liking, for commenting. It's always lovely to read the comments and find out exactly your thoughts on the stories, because as I said, the recent one with the Queen Mother was really interesting from your perspective. Like me, until I'd met that person, I'd got no idea about what she'd done. But that's the thing, that's the beauty, isn't it, of discovering what we enjoy, which is a lot of royal history. It's a little bit like this, some people called this the greatest love story never told. Other people couldn't believe the fact that this particular individual, of course David, decided to give up the throne for the woman that he loved. But apparently, according to a very well-placed source who literally was working for none other than Princess Margaret at the time, she actually believed in this and felt it was a lovely love story, and get this, was forbidden to mention it in front, naturally, of her mother or indeed her father. But a source who worked for Princess Margaret for many years told me that actually she was a hopeless romantic, and I think we could see that in her life, couldn't we? She'd had many, shall we say, varied liaisons, whatever you want to call them, and allegedly she too almost came up to giving up her title and prestige for the man that she loved. But at the 11th hour, when they said, well, this is what you'll get, she decided against it, and I mean that in the kindest of ways. But unlike, say, Harry and Meghan, she knew she couldn't live a normal life because she'd been born into this life. It was the only life that she knew. So clearly, love didn't conquer all. But in the latter part of her life, she felt that obviously Wallis had been rather maligned, and felt indeed that what was her crime other than meeting and falling in love with a man that she loved. Now, according to that source, she actually more or less blamed David, the king, because she said, look, she'd been very clear in the letters about what not to do, what not to give up, but he persisted. And the theory goes, according to this former aide, well, she felt that in fact the king had trapped Wallis into a certain thing that she was unsure about herself. And the idea that Princess Margaret really could be testy and difficult, I think that's actually correct. But the other side of the coin, as I say, she was a wonderful, hopeless romantic. And she pointed out that Wallis Simpson actually gave up far more for this than the king. He knew what he wanted and he went after it. She really had no idea at this point, and as many people pointed out, she still continued to keep in contact with her former husband, Ernest. And apparently that truly was the main love of her life. But she'd resigned herself to the fact that this situation had happened, and in the eyes of the public, it had to be a true love match. Apparently Princess Margaret felt it was a tragic love match, not necessarily a true love match. Fascinating to learn, isn't it? Neil Sean in the very heart of London.